I'm in meetings and interviews constantly, and I got tired of losing good ideas the moment the conversation ended. Using my phone never worked, battery anxiety, limited storage, nonstop notifications. And so now I use the NotePin S as my note-taking assistant by our sponsor, Plod. It starts recording with a single click, runs up to 20 to 50 hours, and lets me mark important moments as they happen. Everything syncs to the app, summarized into to-do lists and easy to search later. And Plod also meets global privacy standards. Learn more at davidpakman.com/plod or scan the QR code. I can't believe that even in 2025, most people are still browsing the internet completely exposed, and you really don't have to. Our sponsor, Private Internet Access, hides your IP address and encrypts your connection so nobody can see what you're doing online. And unlike other VPNs, PIA can prove they do not log your activity. The FBI has demanded user data from PIA. They simply didn't have anything to hand over. It's open source, court tested, verified by independent audit. You can even use it on unlimited devices. So get 83% off, just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months free at piavpn.com/DavidP. The link's in the description. We have a federal ICE agent on video threatening someone for speaking, saying, if you raise your voice, I erase your voice. Yes, it's creepy, but this is a government agent threatening the First Amendment. And it tells you exactly where this is headed, and it's not good. We'll also talk about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar being sprayed with some kind of syringe at a town hall. Instead of condemning it, Trump basically says she probably had herself sprayed. And this is how political violence becomes normalized. Trump also went full dictator mode in a bizarre interview and strangely melted down at a rally whose purpose we don't really understand. And interestingly, Donald Trump infuriating gun owners with his comments about the death of Alex Pretti, really sending MAGA into a panic, but it actually shouldn't surprise us, and I'll explain why. As Trump spirals, even Republicans are starting to say, you know, this ICE thing isn't working out so hot. All of that on today's show. Get the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Quite a program today. An ICE agent in Minnesota threatened a peaceful observer and said, if you raise your voice, I erase your voice. It is creepy and terrifying rhetoric, but maybe most importantly, this is a lawless threat against constitutionally protected speech, which has me once again asking, what laws are being enforced here? A legal observer documenting federal agents in public, completely legal, completely protected constitutionally, and this agent responds with language that sounds more like a dictatorship than a democracy. And you know that we have been talking about that for some time. Let's take a look at this very short video, then I want to talk about it.
I will tell you this, brother.
What?
You know, I will tell you this. You raise your voice, I raise your voice.
If I raise my voice, you'll erase my...
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Are you serious? You
Yeah.
said if I raise my voice, you'll erase my voice?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This is quite literally a lawless threat. It is a threat of, now we don't know whether the agent means he will erase this gentleman's voice by a beatdown or by an arrest. We don't know, but it is the definition of a lawless threat. Now, before I get into the broader analysis, I do want to just like on a personal note, it's not lost on me that this federal agent speaks English with the accent of someone whose first language is Spanish. I know that accent well. My first language is Spanish. And had I come to the US a little bit later, that would be my accent, in fact. And it is not lost on me that those who have benefited from the Constitution and the system of law we have in the United States with regard to immigration, as I have, and as this gentleman has, is so willing to, I mean, listen, he's not enforcing immigration law by telling a protester, I will erase your voice if you raise your voice, because the First Amendment is not a suggestion. It's kind of the baseline rule that the government can't punish you for speaking, filming, criticizing, or yelling at public officials. And so when a federal agent like this guy threatens someone for speaking, that is the state signaling dissent will be punished. It is authoritarian behavior. That's it. And it matters even more in the context where we observe it because it comes after multiple deaths, aggressive raids that have triggered protests in Minnesota and beyond, protests which in and of themselves are constitutionally protected and are expressions of the First Amendment. And so there's growing outrage even from Republicans, as we are going to see later in the show, over federal agents killing civilians, detaining people, escalating confrontations, suggesting that people's First or even Second Amendment rights are going to be taken away. And as the videos spread, the opposition and the disdain for this operation grows. So when an agent says, when one of Trump's goons says, I will erase your voice if you raise your voice, it is not a metaphor. It's not a theoretical thing. It is a broader pattern of intimidation that we are following every single day. Now, to go back to the agent himself having that very accent, which I would be likely to have if I'd come to the United States a little bit later than I did. Immigrants come to this country, presumably, because they believe in rights, including the right to come here. In a democracy, they believe, I hope. In speech, they believe. In the idea that the government cannot erase you for speaking. So hearing someone with an immigrant accent threatening speech in the name of a federal crackdown is particularly disturbing, especially to me personally, as an immigrant from a Spanish-speaking country. And it really shows how quickly people can get absorbed into a system that suppresses the very freedoms they once sought. The First Amendment exists precisely because governments have often tried to silence critics. Sometimes they just don't like critics, but it is still a democracy. Sometimes in authoritarian regimes, there is a crackdown on speech. The founders of this country knew that power naturally tries to shut people up. And that's why we have a First Amendment. You're allowed to yell at cops. You're allowed to film ICE. You're allowed to protest. You're allowed to call the president names. That is the point. And to a degree, this country was founded on that. And so when agents on the ground start threatening people for speaking, it is a sign, a big red alert sign, that the system is sliding from the rule of law to rule by intimidation. And so I would love it if this were not left versus right or immigration policy versus border security. That has nothing to do with this. This guy's not enforcing immigration law. This is about whether the government is allowed to threaten citizens for using their voices. If the answer becomes yes in the United States, democracy is over in practice, even if there are still elections on paper, and even if the First Amendment is still written down there in the Bill of Rights. So when you see a federal agent telling someone, if you raise your voice, I erase your voice, it is not just a viral clip, although it is. It really is a warning sign about how quickly civil liberties erode when fear and power combine. Once speech goes, everything follows. And that is why we are taking this so seriously. And on the other side of this, speech also comes with responsibility. Speech can have consequences. And one of the consequences of Donald Trump's speech that incites violence is that people are listening and people are doing things. And now they've done something to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Let's talk about that next. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota, was attacked during a town hall meeting in Minneapolis when a 55-year-old man believed to be a Trump supporter, certainly from all of the social media history that I have reviewed, walked up to her and sprayed her with an unknown liquid out of a syringe. The attacker was very quickly tackled and arrested, charged with third-degree assault. Ilhan Omar appears to be physically unharmed. It happened as she was talking about abolishing ICE and calling for Secretary of Homeland Security Pretti and Noem to resign after the killing of Alex Pretti. This was not a random moment in a vacuum. This is political violence in the middle of an inflamed crisis. Trump has been attacking Ilhan Omar. And here we have 55-year-old Anthony James Kazmierczak, who decided to do something about it. Now, in the video we are about to play, the individual who perpetrated this alleged crime is sitting in front of Ilhan Omar. It is screen right in the black hoodie there. You see him in the front row, sort of a portly gentleman. He is wearing a gray hoodie. You see the hood. You see glasses up on the top of his head. He is to Ilhan Omar's left, screen right, and you will see him in this video get up and walk towards her. He sprays something very quickly. It's almost hard to see. Subsequently, he gets tackled.
And DHS Secretary Pretti and Noem must resign or face impeachment.
He goes up, sprays something.
I don't know.
So now the guy's on the ground. You hear people saying he sprayed you. What was that? Ilhan Omar says she doesn't know.
I need a napkin to know nothing.
And then Ilhan Omar says that we will continue. The perpetrator is believed to be, as I said, Anthony James Kazmierzak, 55 years old, has been charged with third-degree assault, being held in custody, according to the local sheriff's office. He appears to be a Trump supporter. I looked at the guy's social media, littered with pictures of Trump and Erica Kirk retweeting Elon Musk and all sorts of other stuff. Now, Trump's reaction, rather than to condemn this, rather than to say this is unacceptable in a society that has laws and we will enforce law and order. No, Donald Trump did something very different. He said, quote, "I think she's a fraud. She probably had herself sprayed knowing her." Which, of course, incites more violence. Hours before the attack, Trump was mocking Ilhan Omar, attacking her background, deriding her country of origin, and dehumanizing terms. And so that's the environment where someone walks up and sprays a member of Congress at a public event. Trump turns around and says, she set it up. She brought it on herself. She staged it. And this is how political violence gets normalized. Leaders do set the tone. And when a president treats political opponents as illegitimate or dangerous or deserving of harm, unstable people take that seriously. This is stochastic violence in practice. Now, on Friday, I'm going to deal with that concept in the discussion of my earlier in the week comments, that this entire thing is going to get an ICE agent killed. Some of you wrote in and said, David, are you saying that the protesters are violent? No. What I'm saying is that probabilistically, certain environmental inputs are likely to lead to certain outputs. And when Trump is spending so much time creating an atmosphere where attacking Ilhan Omar feels justified or funny or somehow righteous, and then when there is an attack, instead of condemning it, he suggests the victim set it up, that is probabilistically going to lead to such attacks. It sends a signal. It tells supporters that the violence is understandable. The victims are the problem. This is all very acceptable. And that leads to more violence rather than less. Imagine anyone in your own life responding to an assault by saying the victim probably deserved it or even set it up themselves and thinking, yeah, normal human reaction. It is sociopathic politics. It is extraordinarily dangerous. And we're watching a pattern emerge. Federal agents kill civilians. Trump blames the civilians. A congresswoman is assaulted. Trump blames the congresswoman. Protesters get threatened. Trump cheers the threats. This is very far from law and order. It is an authoritarian narrative management system that blames the victim and defends the powerful. It escalates the conflict. And then again, it will blame the next set of victims and defend the powerful. And the consequences are completely predictable. People see political violence being minimized or even in some cases encouraged. And then the next person says, I'm going to go even further. I'm going to take this even further. Look at history. This is how democracies slide into cycles of retaliation and repression. Now, Ilhan Omar said she's not going to be intimidated, and she did continue her speech. But the fact that we are even talking about members of Congress sprayed at town halls is a sign that something is deeply wrong in this country. When the president responds by blaming her, that is incitement by example. And it has to be condemned clearly. It has to be condemned consistently without caveats, or it is going to get worse. And after the break, we are going to take a deeper dive into exactly what getting worse would mean. Send me your thoughts, info@davidpakman.com. Leave a comment. What do you make of Donald Trump's response to this? And by the way, is there anyone in my audience who thinks there's anything to Trump's assertion that she, quote, had herself sprayed? Let me know. Every January feels like a reset, new calendar, the idea that this could finally be the year you do that thing you want to do. Starting a business doesn't have to be perfection. It's about taking that first step before the month slips away. Shopify matters. Our sponsor, Shopify, gives you everything you need to sell online and in person in one place. Millions of entrepreneurs already use it, including the David Pakman Show for our merch store. You can build a store with customizable templates. You can get set up quickly with built-in AI that'll help you write product descriptions or edit photos, run email and social marketing campaigns. As you grow, Shopify grows with you, helping you manage more orders and reach new markets from that same dashboard. Whether you're selling a product, a service, an idea you can't shake, Shopify gives you the tools to get started. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Pakman. That's shopify.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. As someone who spends hours every week in meetings, interviews, and long-form conversations, my biggest challenge used to be losing ideas the moment that the meeting ends or the conversation stops. And I would try using my phone, but it had a bunch of limitations and trade-offs. And so I started using Plod as my note-taking assistant. Our sponsor, Plod, lets me capture in-person conversations and phone calls and online meetings, and it's all one workflow. With a single click, the Plod NotePin S starts capturing everything, can record up to 20 straight hours, and there's a physical button if there's a key moment I want to be able to go back to that you can press, so I know what to revisit later. Everything syncs to the app. I can see full transcripts, speaker labels across multiple languages, and Plod will turn conversations into really clear summaries and to-do lists. And I can also ask Plod questions later related to past discussions or for brainstorming instantly. And when I'm doing a longer meeting, I switch to the Plod Note Pro, which can run up to 50 hours, and it also picks up voices from further away. Privacy is critical for my work, and Plod meets top global privacy standards. If you're in meetings or interviews a lot, you can't afford to miss details, and this is really worth checking out. Go to davidpakman.com/Plod or scan the QR code. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is an audience-supported program. The most direct means to support our show is to get a website membership. You know, a lot of these platforms, when you support, they take 10%, 20%. Some even take 40% if you can believe it. When you get a membership on our website, 2.9% goes to process the payment, and everything else stays within the show. I want to say a huge thank you to our two newest members, Angie Crickshank and Henry Warwick. Thanks to both of you. You can join them by signing up at joinpakman.com. Read about all of the perks and benefits of being a member on that website, joinpakman.com. Donald Trump went full dictator in a disaster interview. Donald Trump went to Iowa. He did an interview with Fox News' Will Cain in a restaurant. He answered some questions from reporters, and bizarrely, he held a rally for reasons we can't really understand, although it seems to be panicked damage control as Trump's domestic and foreign agendas fail. That's the simplest explanation. Trump is trying to curry favor and tell people how everything is absolutely phenomenal. Maybe the most dictatorial comment that one can make is to say, I don't need guardrails and I don't want guardrails. I should be able to do whatever I want. And that is exactly what Donald Trump said.
But let's go to those guardrails. I'd imagine you do not feel like you need guardrails in this moment. You talk about the investment.
No, I don't need guardrails. I don't want guardrails. Guardrails would hurt us.
I don't need guardrails. I don't want guardrails. Guardrails would hurt us. Really spoken like a true dictator want to be. Guardrails are not something that dictators like. Checks and balances are not something that authoritarians like. And quite literally, the difference between a democracy where our elected officials are accountable to the people and a dictatorship are the limits. Are there guardrails? If there aren't, you might be in a dictatorship. Are there checks and balances? Are there restrictions on the power of the person in charge? If the answer is no, you might be in a dictatorship. What a surprise that the guy who wants to be a dictator doesn't like checks and balances. But it then gets really interesting. Donald Trump, in an effort to blame anybody but the agents who killed Alex Pretti, now is saying things about guns that the MAGA people, the NRA people, the gun people don't like at all. And here is one example of that.
Listen, the entire country is talking about what happened this past weekend in Minnesota. You've already spoken about it. Everyone watching has seen the video. Everyone has an opinion. I'm curious what you thought when you first saw that video.
Well, I think the whole thing is terrible. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible. Both of them were terrible.
There we go. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him. That's pretty unusual. Now, you know, I am for gun safety regulations. I'm for the enforcement of the ones we have. I'm for creating new ones. I think we should require liability insurance if you own a gun. And I've talked about this before. But among people with concealed carry licenses like Alex Pretti, it's not that unusual to have extra ammunition. I mean, I don't like that. I don't like that there's 400 million guns in this country. I don't like that there's billions of bullets or whatever the number is. I think we are less safe as a result of it. But the reality is, if you have a gun and you're carrying it, it's not that rare or weird that you would have extra bullets. But this is Trump now starting to try to figure out, how can I justify the shooting? And for those saying, oh my God, he's changing his view on firearms. Trump doesn't really have a view on firearms. Trump's view is whatever will get me elected, whatever I'm supposed to say to win the nomination and then the presidency. That's all Trump cares about. But if you can say that Alex Pretti's having of a gun is enough to justify the shooting, you get the ICE agents off the hook, you get yourself off the hook. That's the only concern here. On the topic of Renee Good, another person killed by Trump's ICE goons, Trump's focus is that because her parents are or were Trump supporters, that he doesn't like. He feels worse because they were Trump supporters.
And I'm not sure about his parents, but I know her parents were big Trump fans. Makes me feel bad anyway. But, I mean, I guess you could say even worse. They were tremendous Trump people, Trump fans. And, you know, the daughter was, she was, I don't know if you could say radicalized, maybe not. I don't know. But I hate to see it. I hate to see that.
You know, imagine if someone in your life had been killed and someone goes, listen, I mean, I feel bad, extra bad because they were supporters of mine, you know? And Trump has also said about Renee Good's father, I hope he's still a supporter. Forget about whether this is a good political reaction. That is a bizarre reaction on a human level, just on a basic human level. Now, Will Cain did ask Trump, are you kind of pulling back here because of the backlash against what's happening with ICE and in Minneapolis? You got rid of Bavino, people writing in saying I should call him Bavino. Bavino you got rid of, and then you're saying that you had good calls with Governor Walz and Mayor Fry. Are you pulling back? And Trump goes, well, I'm not pulling back, but, and then he throws Bavino under the bus.
It's gone very differently in Minneapolis.
Well, it has. It's the only place.
And now the message is out that Tom Homan is in.
Yeah.
Commander Bavino is supposedly leaving Minneapolis along with some CBP agents. Is this a pullback?
I don't think it's a pullback. It's a little bit of a change. Everybody in this room that has a business, you know, you make little changes. You know, Bavino is very good, but he's a pretty out there kind of a guy. And in some cases, that's good. Maybe it wasn't good here. But you have to understand, when I watch some of the people that I've been watching over the last few weeks, these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid agitators. These people aren't normal, like, OG, that, you know, they're incensed about anything. How do you get incensed when you go into a state and you're taking criminals out? You're taking monsters out, murderers. You know, we had 11,888 murderers let into our country by other countries, by Biden with his open border stupid policy. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You talk about bad policy. Open borders where people were coming, so the whole world, the Congo, Venezuela, all over the world, they're letting people in from their prisons and they're feeding them into the United States. And they're murderers and they're drug dealers and they're everything else you can think of. Every bad name you can think of. and they let them in by the millions. We closed the border. You know, we have...
Okay, so you might be saying, what on earth does that stuff have to do with the question? But understand that there is no question. Trump and the people around him realize he's losing the PR game. He's losing the optics game. This was going to be his signature issue, immigration, and it is failing completely. And under the bus goes Bovino. Donald Trump then bragging about his bailout to farmers without mentioning that the reason the farmers need a bailout is, of course, because of Donald Trump's policy.
And by the way, I just gave the farmers $12 billion because they were treated unfairly. We're taking in a fortune with tariffs. And I wrote them a little check about 2 weeks ago for $12 billion. Anybody in this room get any of it yet? Yes, yeah. A lot of people.
Trump bragging, I did an awesome thing. I'm giving billions of dollars to the farmers. Right, but why do the farmers need the billions of dollars? Oh, because of Donald Trump's policies. I've started a fire and I've partially put it out, and I want to be greeted like a hero firefighter for partially putting out the fire that I started. Donald Trump was asked a question during this visit from a reporter about the comments that Stephen Miller made labeling Alex Pretti a domestic terrorist. Trump's reaction? Say, oh, that's ABC fake news. And of course, it's always women. Trump always shuts down and insults the women.
President, some of your own administration officials have labeled Alex Pretti.
By the way, this is ABC fake news, this one. She hasn't asked me a good question in years. I think a nice woman, but I don't really like her too much. Go ahead. What'd you say? I'd say ABC's about as bad as they get.
And of course, the question was based in fact. Pretti Noem exactly said what the reporter suggested.
Yes. The White House has labeled the man who was killed in Minnesota as a domestic terrorist. Is that something you agree with? And have you seen any evidence to back up that claim?
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. This individual who came...
I guess it wasn't a fake news question after all, was it? And then finally, in what I believe is one of the worst bits of political messaging that you could possibly employ, Trump says, inflation's gone, prices came down, it's all fixed up.
Literally. It just shows how hard it is to clean up, even after you close it. It shows the price that we paid under Joe Biden.
It's the hardest thing when you think of it. You know, inflation we've solved. It's done. We have it good. Where prices are coming way down. They were just saying in Iowa, the fuel is $1.95. Did you hear that? Somebody said $1.85, but it was $3.50, $4.50 just
Notice the people behind Trump as he says we've solved prices, just staring down glumly, knowing that this isn't true, knowing that the promised price reductions never happened.
Year and a half ago. You look at eggs, you look at groceries, it's all down. Everything's come down. Do you notice they don't mention affordability anymore? That's like an old-fashioned word. They brought up.
This is terrible messaging on this issue. It didn't work for Biden-Harris, and it's not going to work for Trump to tell people, I solved inflation, prices are down, when all that's happened is prices have continued to increase at roughly the same rate that they were under Joe Biden. I think it's losers messaging. Trump then held a rally. Now, you might be saying, why is Trump holding a rally? He's not running for anything. What is the point of this? The point is to convince people that everything is awesome. Trump going to Clive, Iowa, and you hear dead silence as Trump lies about prices coming down. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. And the people in the crowd who have been handed signs, some of them that say lower prices, they know prices are not down.
And they come up with this word affordability. And I saw it even, although you're not hearing it so much anymore. You know why? Because the prices are coming down so much. They don't want it to be an election based on lower prices. But we're bringing down the lower, I like that term better. It's the lower prices. We're bringing them down.
The crowd knows this isn't true. The crowd is in silence as Donald Trump lies to them, and they know that he is lying to them. Now, Trump's speech was interrupted by a heckler, and Trump wrote this off as these people are paid to do this, and these people are sick.
This country's covering half of all U.S. trade.
You do know they're paid agitators, right? They're paid.
They're paid agitators.
They get paid. You know, do you ever see their signs? You know, we used to have protests, and you'd have guys make you a sign in a basement. These are all paid agitators. That's all they are. They get paid to go, and they don't even know what, when they interview them, why are you here? I don't know. They have no idea. They're paid.
And of course, there is no evidence that any of these are paid agitators. And by the way, who would pay them and for what? There are tens of millions of people disgusted with how Trump is running the country. They are angry enough to go out and protest Trump. Trump insists that he is working really hard, really hard to bring back law and order, which is confusing to all of us who see Trump's ICE and Border Patrol goons break the law rather than enforce it. And then Trump goes, you can finally say Christmas now, thanks to Donald Trump.
100%. We're also working tirelessly to bring back a thing called law and order. You know, there was a time.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a time that you weren't allowed to use the words law and order. I like that guy. You weren't allowed to use the term law and order. You weren't allowed to use the term Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody, right?
Right.
Remember that 2016? I ran on, we're going to bring back Christmas. We did. Now they're afraid to suggest it, but we brought that back. But law and order, we need law and order. And we have the lowest crime rate now in the history of our country. That's,
you know, Trump seems to be more of a perpetrator of breaking the law than of enforcing the law. And it's hard to think of a president that represents anything further from law and order than Trump. Trump now says that he wants to give money to insurance companies. Very cool, populist idea. Fix healthcare by giving money to insurance companies. The crowd is not buying it, folks. The crowd is not buying it.
Done a lot. I've recently introduced my plan to repair the damage of the Unaffordable Care Act, the worst disaster, which now costs many families more than a mortgage. If you look, a number came out, it's a bigger cost than a mortgage, and it's bad health care. Obamacare was created to make insurance companies rich with government subsidies. I want all that money that gets paid to the insurance companies to get paid directly to the people. That's all I want. So that you can buy better health care at a lower cost. The problem is the Democrats don't want to do that because they are owned by the insurance companies. So they say, oh, we don't want to do that. I want the money to be paid to the people to go out and buy their own health care. You'll buy much better health care. You have a
Populist Trump says, let's start giving money directly to insurance companies. I'm sure that will bring down costs. I'm sure that will increase access and quality, right? No, I don't really think so. Trump then going after Biden for wanting to sleep, which is, of course, weird since Trump falls asleep in public all the damn time.
We had a country that was just dead. We had a country that was just not respected by anybody. We had a guy who didn't know where the hell he was. Do you think he worried about his farmer at night? No. He just wanted to go to sleep. This is what we had.
Trump doesn't care that he falls asleep in public all the time. Biden wanted to sleep. The winner of the FIFA Peace Prize in his full glory, Donald Trump threatening Iran during this rally speech. We're going to delve into the Iran thing a little bit more later.
About a month away from having a nuclear weapon, we had to do it. And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal.
Hopefully we don't have to bomb them, but I'm sending an armada right now. Trump pulling out the "sir" with tears in my eyes, claiming that the people he's been speaking to during his visit to Iowa are just crying uncontrollably.
I just left a great group of people from Iowa, and half of them were crying as they talked to me. I don't think they were crying because I'm doing a bad job. You know, in theory, you'd cry if you do a bad. They were crying because I've done a good job. Sir, they said, sir, you've brought our country back. Crying. One woman was fantastic. She grabbed me and she put her head right there, and her tears are pouring over my beautiful suit. I figured I'd get it. And I checked it out, and there was a lot of makeup all over. I said, what the hell am I going to do? I got get myself in trouble. No, but she was crying, and I said, don't cry, be happy.
Totally normal behavior, totally normal story. I'm sure it happened just the way Trump is describing. We've reported to you that Donald Trump's support among Hispanic voters, which did pop for him in 2024. I mean, congrats to Trump. He did secure more of the Hispanic vote in 2024 than Republicans have in a really long time, maybe ever. I don't know about the maybe ever, but for a long time. The problem is that almost half of that support from Hispanic voters has disappeared in Donald Trump's first year in office, but Donald Trump is still touting it.
We are starting to see the historic success reflected in tremendous polls. We have great polls. In last week's Rasmussen poll, we're leading among Hispanic voters. We're leading by a lot. Nobody's ever seen a Republican lead among Hispanic voters. You know, Hispanic voters don't want crime. People don't realize that. Hispanic voters want strong borders because they know what's coming in and they don't want them. They're great. They've been great. We did so great in the election with Hispanic.
We did so great with Hispanic voters. Trump later distracted by a woman's physical appearance in the audience.
And they don't want them.
Sorry, this is the wrong clip. Here's the right one.
Where is she? Oh, she's so beautiful. I'm not allowed to say that anymore. If I say a woman is beautiful, that's the end of your political career, you know? But she is beautiful. How are you? Congratulations.
There you go.
What a good story.
And then finally, Trump says he eliminated taxes on Social Security. The only problem is that is not in the bill.
Which is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for our seniors. Do we have any seniors in here? Do we have any seniors in here?
The only problem is that Donald Trump's bill did not eliminate taxes on Social Security. Why is he doing this? Is this convincing anybody that he is doing a good job to show up and say, we fixed inflation, prices came down? People go, oh, I don't know about that. They stand silently. Everything is great. And here are some threats against other countries as the peace president. That doesn't seem to me like this is going to help him. But I think desperation about the 2026 midterms is really the reason Trump's doing this at all. Many VPNs claim they don't track you. Only one can prove it, and that's our sponsor, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is the only VPN with multiple real-world court cases showing that when law enforcement requests user logs, they don't have them because they don't log anything. Their software is open source. Anyone can inspect the code and confirm that. There's transparency that you do not normally see in the VPN industry. You can use one account on unlimited devices, phone, laptop, tablet, even your router. Works with Netflix and YouTube and streaming services worldwide. It is like a secure tunnel between you and the internet that nobody can see into. I've been using PIA for years. It's one of the few privacy or security tools I truly trust. Get 83% off, just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months free at piavpn.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. One thing that's become impossible to ignore with mainstream AI chatbots is how aggressively they police what you are allowed to ask. Perfectly normal questions get flagged, refused, or answered with warnings like you're doing something wrong just for being curious. And so it starts to feel less like a tool and more like an interrogation, assuming that you are the problem. And that's why the AI tool I use instead is Venice. Our sponsor, Venice, takes a completely different approach. Your conversations are encrypted. They're only stored on your device, not on company servers. They are never used for training data. There's no surveillance. There's no content policing. There's no treating users like potential criminals for asking questions. Venice runs open source AI models for text, code, images, and video directly in your browser or app. No censorship. The Pro plan adds features like PDF uploads, higher usage limits, custom system prompts, and uncensored image generation, all while keeping control in your hands. If you want AI that doesn't monitor or restrict you, go to venice.ai/Pakman to get 20% off a Pro plan. The link is in the description. Donald Trump appears to be turning on guns in a desperate act of self-preservation. The NRA doesn't like it. MAGA doesn't like it. And gun owners feel viciously attacked because Trump is saying no more guns. How can this be? Let me explain to you what's happening. A Republican president, Donald Trump, just said, you can't have guns. You can't just be walking around with guns. I apologize for the poor audio. This was as Donald Trump was getting ready to go to the helicopter, to go to the plane, to go to Iowa for yesterday's terrible interview and horrible rally. And Trump said, you can't just have guns. You can't walk in with guns. You can't walk around with guns. You can't do it. But the killing of Alex Pretti was unfortunate. Let's try to listen through the bad audio to hear what Trump said. Now, a lot of people are asking, did Donald Trump just turn on gun owners? Is Donald Trump reversing his opinion about firearms? And the answer is no. This is not a reversal of ideology. I had a great Substack Live yesterday with Mike Nellis, and we went into detail about this. Trump never had a coherent ideology to reverse. Trump's political beliefs have always been theoretical, situational, and conceptual. And what matters is what benefits him in the moment. Right now, Trump needs to be able to blame the victim, Alex Pretti, for his death at the hands of ICE agents. Trump doesn't want the federal agents to be blamed, because if you blame the federal agents, it is essentially blaming Trump by proxy, because they were only there because of Trump's deportation and immigration raid scheme. The easiest way to say the responsibility for Alex Pretti's killing is not on the agents is to say you can't just walk around with guns. And so Trump is shifting the blame from state violence to civilian behavior. It's not that the agents are bloodthirsty and out of control. It is that Alex Pretti walked in with a gun, and that protects Trump's administration. It protects Trump's paramilitary crackdown. And this is the key point that a lot of people miss about Donald Trump. He's not a principled conservative. He's not a principled populist. He's not a principled anything. He's an incentive machine. Do any of us believe that the non-religious Trump really was suddenly religious at age 68 when he decided to enter politics? I don't believe it for a second. It was a calculation because he was running a Republican primary. Do any of us believe that pro-choice Trump at age 68 suddenly became against abortion? Of course not. It is because of the political environment that he needed to find points of appeal for. And so it's whatever keeps him in power, whatever keeps the base loyal or protects his people is what he is going to say, even if it contradicts yesterday's talking point. And so this is why you see the NRA and gun rights conservatives furious at Trump. And it's amazing. They're furious for multiple reasons. First, you've got people who are claiming that Alex Pretti was a domestic terrorist or an assassin or deserved to be shot or whatever, simply because he had a gun. NRA doesn't believe that. Gun rights groups don't believe that. And so then they say, we need an actual investigation here because just having a gun is not a crime. And then Trump says, you can't just walk around with guns like this. And again, the NRA goes, what the hell is he talking about? That's not what we believe. So the important thing to understand is that Trump's worldview was never that constitutional rights are universal or even that they matter that much. You know, it's the better belief is constitutional rights are something that some people get, but for others, it's a problem. When it's rural conservatives carrying rifles, that's freedom. Of course, Trump supports that for political reasons. When it's a protester filming ICE, it's dangerous. That's chaotic. You can't just bring a gun. It needs federal force. So there's no real reversal here. It's the underlying belief made explicit. I will say whatever is good for me and my administration. If it's I'm trying to get donations and votes by saying pro guns, guns are great, more guns in more places, then I'll say that. If it's I need to defend my deportation force and these aggressive, lawless goons by saying Alex Pretti shouldn't have had a gun to begin with, then I will say that. That's all it is. And so the North Star is when guns protect Trump's base, they are sacred. When guns complicate Trump's narrative, they're unacceptable. The ideology has always been these post hoc rationalizations. And this is why Trump can be anti-free speech when speech is used to criticize him, but pro-free speech when the speech helps him. Or Trump is pro-police when police are cracking down on anti-Trump protesters, but anti-law enforcement when it was the officers defending the Capitol on January 6th, or the FBI investigating him. It's all flexible. There's no ideology underneath. It's what incentives does Trump have and what grievances is he fighting about? And this is why MAGA is in shambles over what Donald Trump is now saying about firearms. They believed the rhetoric. They believed Trump was the avatar of a coherent conservative worldview that included pro-gun. But when reality collides with Trump's personal incentives and people are going, these are Trump's goons that did this, he then has to reverse. And so what Donald Trump is telling gun owners is what he has always implicitly believed. These rights are conditional and these rights are situational. It has always been obvious that conservatives, especially the Trump wing, viewed constitutional rights as something they get. And for others, I'm not so sure. A lot of these pro-gun white right-wingers aren't as hot on the idea of Black Americans arming themselves in large numbers. Sometimes they'll go, listen, as long as you go through the process, everybody's... But they don't love that. Their movement isn't about let's get more guns in the hands of Black and brown people. Some of them will say we are for all legal gun ownership, but a lot of them will not. And the Pretti case, the killing of Alex Pretti, has forced Trump into this position. He does it without hesitation. His ideology was never an ideology. The only real ideology is what is good for me today, and he's losing a lot of MAGAs over it. Check this out. Glenn Beck, who is still making content, I guess, has a problem with Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. The problem he has is that she said the presence of Alex Pretti's gun was part of the problem and part of why he got what he deserved. Glenn Beck goes, that's not, no. And this is one of many examples of the right turning on this concept that merely having the gun meant Alex Pretti deserved some of what he got.
This is compelling video because what this BBC reporter is saying is true. It's absolutely true. He is getting in between him, the police, and somebody else the police are shoving. He is only holding a phone. He is down on the ground. He is resisting arrest, but his hands are down on the ground. His head is down on the ground. Then another agent reaches over on top of the other agents who are closest to him on the ground, reaches into his back where he sees an exposed gun, pulls the gun out, and then walks away with the gun. So he's no longer armed unless he has two guns, and they don't claim that he had two guns, only one. And pulls it out and walks away. Right after that, somebody yells, gun, 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 gun. That's when the police officer fires at him. Now, the other police officer did not know that somebody reached in and took his gun. It might have been somebody who was saying gun, might have been saying it because they saw the other guy, because he's not marked as a federal agent, the other guy pull the gun out and walking there with a gun. So somebody might have seen him with a gun and said, gun, gun, gun. All the cops think that it's Pretti, and they shoot him. Okay. This is not something that you deal with as, an 8-year-old. This is a conversation for adults to have. And I'm not hearing the adults. First of all, what Noem said is not true. He didn't approach. If you want to say technically he approached carrying a 9mm, he did, but it was holstered and in his back. And you have a right to carry a gun at a protest. I don't think that makes you smart, but it does. It is perfectly legal and constitutionally protected. So I'm sorry, just because you have a gun in your back, if you reach for the gun, if you pull for the gun, then you could probably be expected to be shot if you are pushing the police around.
All right, you get the point. Glenn Beck is not buying this story. He says this is not how gun rights work. This is not how the Second Amendment works. This is not how the Constitution works. He is willing to say the narrative from the Trump administration is no good. Reminder from yesterday. Here is Sean Spicer, Trump's former press secretary, communications director. He says being at extra risk of being attacked because you show up with a gun is not what we have stood for decades. We can't be saying that.
Real bad when you lose the NRA and the reddest state in the country on this.
Yeah, look, I'm a concealed carry permit kind of guy. I'm a huge defender of the Second Amendment. We've been talking about the ability for Americans to protect themselves for decades on the right. So to say that if you show up somewhere with an armed, that you're somehow vulnerable to getting attacked or approached is absolutely antithetical to everything that conservatives have stood for decades.
It is absolutely antithetical to everything that conservatives have stood for decades. I don't have to agree with the sentiment to recognize that he's correct, that it is the opposite of what they've been standing for and arguing for decades. That's true. That is absolutely and completely true. And Donald Trump is increasingly trying to figure out, how can I justify any of this when I have to deal with and contend with the fact that the behavior that Alex Pretti was participating in is what I've been advocating for years. Now, of course, if you add those rights are available for my supporters, but not for my detractors, well, then maybe you would have a sort of different situation there. But they are turning on Trump over this because they recognize this is not what we have stood for a very long time. Can this tension be resolved in a way that will be satisfactory to the gun rights groups? You know, I think the cleanest way out of this is allow what appears to be a real investigation and have the investigation say the officers acted appropriately. I don't know how you get there because the video is so damning for the officers, but I think Trump's escape hatch would be, we need an investigation. That's what the NRA wants. And then have the investigation be favorable. You would have to lie and coerce people, I think, to achieve that. But Trump's really in a pickle here. And people like Sean Spicer and Glenn Beck realize this is not what we were told. Identity theft and targeted scams often start long before the breach, when bits of your personal life, addresses, emails, relatives, your work history, are scattered around the internet on these data broker sites, and that information is sold or reused. Our sponsor, Incogni, will get that stuff removed for you, not from just a single type of website. They will work to take down your personal information wherever it shows up online, shrinking the pool of info that bad actors rely on. Incogni automatically handles removals from hundreds of known sites, but their unlimited plan goes even further with custom removals, where if you find your info anywhere, paste the link to Incogni, and they will get to work removing that for you. This matters because a single overlooked listing can be enough for a scammer to impersonate you or even open accounts in your name. Incogni's data removal process is independently verified by Deloitte, which adds a layer of trust. You can get 60% off when you go to incogni.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman. The link is in the description. Well, everything is collapsing at once for this administration. Foreign policy, domestic economic policy, immigration policy, and so much more. And this makes Trump really, really angry. And so he went out, and I guess in an effort to try to clean some of this up, he said he loves Alex Pretti's family, but also Kristi Noem is doing a very, very good job. Let's take a listen to this exchange, and I think it will become clear the precarious position that this administration finds itself in right now.
Well, I'm looking at that whole situation. I love everybody. I love all of our people. I love his family. And it's a very sad situation. Yeah, please. I have, yeah. I think he's doing a very good job. The border is totally secure. You know, you forget.
All right. So Trump asked, do you think Kristi Noem is doing a good job? And he says, absolutely. Now, there's a couple different things here that I think are important. Compared to the killing of Renee Good, the White House, for better or worse, whatever they believe, they have come to understand that a lot of people are not seeing the Alex Pretti killing the way they are seeing the Renee Good killing. And that while the Renee, I believe both were murder, but these are two different scenarios. And even a lot of Republicans are looking at the video of the Alex Pretti killing and going, this is not justified. And the fact that they're saying he deserved it simply because he had a gun, which was holstered, that is not flying right, as we already talked about. So Trump is being a little more careful. He's actually saying we're looking at it, we're investigating, not the patriotic officers remain safe as the victims here by killing. He's not saying that. Caroline Leavitt has backed off of that. He knows that this is different. But there is widespread reporting that he also, in addition to demoting Greg Bovino as the commander at large of the Border Patrol for his role up there in Minneapolis, that he is not happy with Kristi Noem and that she is on the chopping block. When asked in that particular clip, Trump said, no, she's doing a great job. He was then asked about whether she was going to decide to step down on her own. That is Kristi Noem. This is another scenario where you don't end up, rather than Trump firing her, which brings its own political baggage, maybe she just decides herself to step down. And Trump just says no.
Is Kristi Noem going to step down?
She is not going to step down, and then he steps away there. This is classic Trump crisis mode. He publicly says everything's perfect. He privately scrambles to contain the fallout. He's probably screaming at aides and throwing ketchup and going, why are they saying this? Why are they saying that? We got to get him to stop saying this. And you can see the tension on this issue as he talks. He praises Noem, doesn't want to answer follow-ups, expresses sympathy for Pretti's family, says we've got to investigate it, but you can't just go in there carrying a gun. These are incoherent positions. They're not even meant to be coherent, I believe. They are meant to keep multiple different audiences temporarily satisfied. And then hopefully the story will burn itself out. We have to make sure that the story doesn't burn itself out. The videos aren't going away. It doesn't seem as though the protests are going away. Congressional investigations only seem to be ramping up, including one of Kristi Noem that is getting going now. And it seems clear that Donald Trump recognizes this could define his second term. And this is why he's irritated and dismissive when he's asked about Kristi Noem stepping down. He knows if he fires her, he's essentially admitting guilt. But keeping her looks like he's endorsing what's going on. And he is losing control of the narrative. It's really good for Trump, or at least we could say Trump thrives in chaos when the chaos is abstract. He doesn't like chaos when it attaches to him directly. And the problem for Trump of this modern smartphone age is that theoretical stuff. Oh, there was a crazy situation in Minneapolis. It's no longer abstract. It's very concrete when you've got people filming it. And so Trump is losing control of the narrative. He's losing control of his coalition. He's losing control of the optics. And you get this weird mix of denial and vague empathy and this kind of authoritarian defiance. He loves the family. He loves Kristi Noem. She's not going to get fired or quit. And we're not really going to have accountability, but we're investigating. This is a political system grinding gears. All of this stuff is grinding against each other. He attacks the media. He attacks the protesters. He attacks guns. He attacks local officials. He threatens emergency powers. But at the end of the day, all he really cares about is how can I get out of this? And the fact that Trump looks annoyed and evasive and contradictory is because this is not just another news cycle. I think that something is breaking inside this administration. Trump is not de-escalating in normal scenarios. He normally escalates. And even though he's doing it in a failed way, Trump is making some attempts here to equivocate and maybe de-escalate a little bit. And if you want to see an example of the problem Trump is having, it has 8 letters. Rand Paul. That's a very short name. Rand Paul. Let's talk about that next. Republican Rand Paul. What can we say about him? I can say a lot of negative things about Rand Paul. But you know, one of the things that seems to hold true about Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, and Congressman Thomas Massie, a Republican, is that they are more principled than your average Republican. Many of their principles I disagree with, to be clear, but they are more principled than many Republicans, and they don't seem willing to say whatever to stay in Trump's good graces. Here is Rand Paul on Fox Business just hours ago saying, when you look at the video of Alex Pretti, you are not going to believe the Trump administration's version of events. This is responsible for a Republican to say.
It's President Trump seeming to defend Kristi Noem yesterday. Your thoughts?
You know, I think one of the best things President Trump has done, and really people from across the aisle support, is removing violent people from our cities. So I think that's been a good thing largely, but it can't be done with no rules. And so when people watch that video and the government tells them, well, he was assaulting the police officers, nobody with any objectivity watches that video and believes that's what's happening. As the man retreats, with each altercation, he retreats, and then the woman is thrown violently to the ground. He's thrown to the ground. No American believes that he was assaulting the officers. In fact, the opposite appears to be true. So we have to get some rules of the game, and we can't have the government justifying this type of behavior because the vast majority of Americans think this was unfair, what happened. The intimation, or actually the explicit call to say you don't have a Second Amendment right to carry arms in a protest really flies in the face of most of our Second Amendment community. I can tell you I've been to dozens and dozens of rallies and or protests where people are visibly armed or have concealed carry. So the people who are saying this, we need to get this straight so we can have some kind of awareness if people go to a protest that they know what the rules of the game are.
And you know what? We have the rules of the game. It's the Constitution and Minnesota law. We've looked at it. Alex Pretti was within his rights. I'm not a gun guy. I don't like more guns in more places. But if we care about the law, we've got to go by what the law is. And Rand Paul is completely correct. Rand Paul, a Republican, saying we need an investigation, but can we trust an investigation done by the very people who should be getting investigated, done by the very people who said Alex Pretti is an assassin and is a domestic terrorist? On this issue, Rand Paul's right.
With this, and we need to know going forward that there will be some rules. There needs to be an independent investigation, for goodness sakes. There has to be an investigation. If this happened on a police force, the officers, whether or not they committed anything wrong, would immediately be put on administrative leave, and there would be an investigation. But I don't know who trusts an investigation to be done by DHS when they're the ones calling this person an assassin, a would-be assassin, a domestic terrorist, saying he was assaulted the police. How can they be in charge of an independent investigation?
And he's, of course, correct. We've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing is bullshit. And Rand Paul knows it. Finally, even on the issue of ICE, he says, listen, I don't want to totally defund ICE, but I'm not going to give them more money the way they're operating.
I acknowledge there need to be some money, but we've thrown so much money at this problem that, you know, there are just piles of it sitting around that I think people ought to think this through before. It's not all or none. I don't want to defund ICE, but I'm not sure I want to give them billions and billions more without any kind of signs of there are going to be some rules of the game and there will be an independent investigation.
Well, you know,
listen, I disagree with Rand Paul about a lot. He's right about this. The video directly listen, he makes three main points. Number one, the video directly undercuts the storyline that has been told that Alex Pretti was a threat to officers, planned to kill officers, etc. You watch the video, you know that's not true. Number two, Alex Pretti was not committing any crimes by being there armed, nor is being there armed justification for what happened to Alex Pretti. He was operating within the bounds of the law. And number three, hell yes, we need an investigation. But if they investigate themselves after saying Alex Pretti was an assassin and a domestic terrorist, that is not the sort of investigation that is going to feel good that it was actually done objectively. He's right on those three main points. And broken clocks are sometimes right. And Rand Paul is certainly one of those clocks that sometimes does get it right. We will talk about calls for a massive nationwide shutdown against ICE on January 30th on today's bonus show. We will talk about the latest move by Barry Weiss at CBS to bring in some commentators. I'll tell you who they are. And we will talk about what's going on TikTok now with Epstein mentions and anti-Trump content. It is wild what is going on TikTok. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpakman.com. Get instant access. And remember, all of the clips on my show are parts of my daily podcast. You can get the podcast on any podcast platform you like, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure to rate the podcast on Spotify and Apple, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple. It's free. Everything I've mentioned is free, and it really helps us. The right is pushing to take over the podcast charts. We've got to stop them from doing it. I'll see you on the bonus show. I'll see you here tomorrow.